Can you all hear me okay? Okay. So today we're going to talk about death and dying, Buddhist approach to death and dying. And I have to get used to translator, like we have to backwards and forwards. So yes, so it's whether we're Buddhist or not, whether we're Christian, whether we're Muslim, it's something we all have to have an approach to. It's not like if it's just the Buddhist approach to death and dying. We should all think about the fact of death and dying. We should all consider, whatever our religion or faith is or no faith, we all have to face it sooner or later. But we don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know what form it will take. So, but of course, today we are looking more about how do we think about it from the Buddhist point of view. So, for all of us, there will come a time when there's no extension possible. You know, that's it. We've reached the limit of our lifespan. One thing that's very interesting that I maybe could add here is that when you look at the Tibetan medicine, the Tibetan approach to medicine, our sicknesses, the way of looking at sickness is actually very different from the Western way of looking at sickness. It says that there are, in the medical tantras, it says there are 404 different types of illnesses, or there are 404 different groups of illnesses. And one of these groups is the type of illness where you just recover. You get sick, you just recover. It's like you have a flu. You go to bed, you have a lemsip, and you get better. So it's no big deal. And the second group is more serious. You get sick, but you take medicine. There's some treatment available, and you still get better. So it could be maybe cancer, or maybe some other serious illness, and you get better. Third type of illness says, they're not specifically in this order, but it says one where you can recover through spiritual means. The type of illness where you may try all the different kinds of medications that are possible, and none of it works. You don't get better. But if you were in a place like Tibet or Asia somewhere, you might go and see either a Tibetan doctor or a Rinpoche, a master there, who would tell you, well, you should do 100,000 taras, or make a whole lot of satsas, or do a lot of purification practices of some form, and then you will get better. So that, or you do medicine Buddha practice, you do different practices, and then you could get better. So that's one of them as well. And then the last one. So the last one is where it says, never mind what you do, never mind what kind of medicine you take, never mind what kind of treatment you do, that grouping of illnesses, they're terminal. It's like karmically, there's nothing you can do. Whether you take the medicine or not, you die. Whether you do the spiritual practices or not, you die. It's like that, that's it. You come to the end of your lifespan, and there's no way we can lengthen it, really. So that's how these four groups are divided up. In a very simple way, of course. It's much more elaborate in the actual teachings. So in Buddhism, you talk about the 6 realms of existence. I don't know if you are all familiar with the 6 realms of existence, but it's said that within samsara, you know, our worldly existence, there is these 6 realms. And all of them, the common sort of reality that we all experience within samsara is birth, sickness, old age and deterioration, and death. And this is like the boundary that it's like a fence. It's like the walls that hold us within samsara. We go through birth, sickness, deterioration, death, birth, sickness, deterioration of death. and according to our karma, our activity, our intentions, we are reborn again and again within one of these 6 realms. So we could compare these 6 realms to a hospital. You know, it's like a hospital with 6 wards. If you have a hospital and you go to one, specialized ward in one sickness, another ward is specialized in a second sickness, etc. So like that, the 6 realms, they're like the manifestation of our own illness. We are reborn in these particular realms depending on our illness, whether our main illness is anger, whether our main illness is craving and desire, our main illness is jealousy. We're reborn in one of those realms. And so, in a way, samsara, we could view it as like a massive, massive hospital. But the problem with the hospital, of course, one problem is there's a lot of suffering. All of these realms are full of people who are ill and need treatment. But another problem is there's only one exit. There's no, like normally we have lots of emergency exits around the place, isn't it? We have to have lots of emergency exits. This one has got one emergency exit. There's only one. There's only one way out of samsara, is understanding the nature of mind, understanding what created all of this suffering in the first place. So we say to be free, the Buddhist view is to really free oneself from the continuous cycle of birth, sickness, old age or deterioration, and death that we have been continuously going in for so long time. We need to come to the understanding of the nature of reality, the nature of mind, or the nature of non-duality, you could say. That's the exit. That's the only exit point. We have to find that exit point. So that's the remedy for all the sicknesses. So from that point of view, it's said that to understand both life and death, to understand how to free ourselves from all the suffering in all these different realms, we have to learn to, we have to find this remedy, of course. We have to find and discover this nature of mind, but we have to stay in the present. What we are constantly striving to do is staying in the present, not being caught up in the past, not being involved in the future. So when we meditate, of course, that's what we are aiming for, finding that exit. So that means we try to accept change. So that means also in terms of our relationship with change, means our relationship with death and dying. By living in the present, we have more of a direct relationship with change and with the change that happens at the time of death. It said if we are always living in the future, we are like somebody who's constantly thinking about, or reading cookbooks, you could say. Somebody who's constantly reading cookbooks and dreaming up wonderful recipes, but we never really get to eat them. That's like all of our ideas of the future. And if we are all the time caught up in the past, we are like a person who is constantly heating up all of our old leftovers maybe in the fridge, and we get sick from eating them. Constantly we are rehashing the past. Constantly we are going over the past again and again, or constantly we are daydreaming about the future. So with our meditation, we're trying to be more and more in the present. And so this deterioration that is happening, when we come closer to death, it can happen in many different ways. It can happen very suddenly, or it can happen through sudden death, or through illness, through sickness, through slow death. It can be painful, can be peaceful. We don't really know. But we need to use our life to prepare for it, to prepare to find that exit, to prepare to find, so it's not just another death and a rebirth within those 6 realms, but that we actually find that one exit that takes you right out of that hospital, right out of the 6 realms. So we try to use our life to prepare in that way. So from that point of view, you can say that our life now is a journey towards that exit, a journey. And just like when we take a journey in this life, there are lots of things we have to do beforehand, right? We have to prepare for the journey. We have to pack our bags. We have to say goodbye to our loved ones. We have to have a map of where we are going. We have to know what is the end destination. If we don't know what our end destination is, maybe we get off at the wrong stop. We take the wrong bus, take the wrong train. So whenever we go on a journey, there's a lot of preparation we need to do. And it's like that as well with death. So during our life, we are preparing for that journey, the journey at the time of death. So of course our life is not purely about preparing for death, but if you think of death in terms of each moment, there is a beginning and there is an end, so there's actually constant death. The Buddhist view is also each moment is a new beginning. There is the end of the past, there's a new beginning. So death happens each moment. But what we talk about here is the death of our body, the elements of our body deteriorating. Our home, our physical home that we have become so familiar with throughout our life that we think this is who I am, this body that is made of the 5 elements, it will eventually deteriorate and it will eventually fall apart. And we will have to make that journey. But like our spiritual path, I would say, yes, it is about preparing for that journey, for that end, but it's also about living our life to the full at the same time. The more you think about impermanence and death, the more you live your life to the full, and the less you waste your opportunities when they arise. At least that's the idea. That's what we're aiming for, right? So just like when we are on a journey, there's a sense of a transition. There's a setting off, and there's a journey, and there's a destination. And when we go off on a journey, sometimes we are like apprehensive about where we are going. If we're going maybe for the first time by ourselves, we are going alone on a very long journey. We are going off on that train or that plane for the first time and saying goodbye to our loved ones and leaving all the familiar things behind. There is a certain fear and apprehension and also maybe expectation of what we are going towards. So maybe death could be the same. We could say that death is a similar experience. Well, we don't know what the experience will be like, but we could view it in the same way as a journey like that. So when we are dying, we are going on a journey of the mind, you could say, where similarly we have to leave this body, we have to certainly leave this body behind at the time of death. Our most loved possession, I think, is probably our body. We have to say goodbye to our most beloved possessions. We have to leave our body behind. We have to say goodbye to our most beloved loved ones, our most loved ones. We have to leave everyone behind. We have to, ideally our mind during our life has been prepared so we are able and we are sort of focused for that journey. We know where we're going. We have studied the map. We are in good shape to go on that journey so that we are not, we are not completely unprepared. And hopefully we have packed a good luggage. Hopefully, in terms of our karma, you could say, we have in our luggage bag, we have a lot of virtue, because we have spent our time, our life, doing positive things. We've spent our life planting lots of positive seeds. We have spent our life doing our very, very best in terms of how we have used our speech, how we have used our mind, how we have used what our actions have been. Hopefully our baggage is not full of negative actions, negative karma, a lot of regret, a lot of sadness, a lot of despair, a lot of attachment, a lot of clinging, a lot of resentment or anger. That's not what we want to carry in our luggage on that journey. So these are ways we can prepare that, so that we're ready for that journey of the mind. So the way we prepare ourselves is that we become very familiar with the whole idea of impermanence. It becomes part of our way of thinking. We notice, observe and see and think about impermanence regularly. And it's very easy and very simple to do. We think about this body, that I have so much attachment and identification with this body. I say, this is me, this is who I am. I am this body. But of course, it gives us a certain amount of stability during our life. And what happens at the time of death is that stability that we have normally on a day-to-day basis, that stability is gone. Because that stability is rooted in these 5 elements of our body. We always come back, we wake up in the morning, we always, here I am again in this body with the same creaking knees and the same aches and pains. It's still me, yes. And when we are on our meditation cushion, yes, we are grounded in our body. That gives us a certain sense of stability. But it's often, I think, a false sense of stability. So when death happens, we don't have that stability anymore of our physical form. We have to observe and develop stability of the mind. We have to think about impermanence, so we are very aware of that continuous change in our body, that there's nothing there that I can really say this is who I am and that is permanently there. From the time I was a baby till now, it has continued to change. So I am not my body. I certainly cannot identify with my body. And then we have to look at developing a strength and stability within our mind. And that's why we meditate. So when we look at our meditation, when we observe ourselves in meditation, then we can judge for ourselves, how stable is my mind? How focused is my mind? Am I able to stay, in one point or not? Am I able to be clear? Am I able to maintain clarity? And if while I have the apparent stability of my body in this life, if I'm still not able to be present, then I think we can assume that at the time when the body is not there to support us anymore, then our instability will be much stronger, right? So we need to prepare. The key point is we need to prepare our mind while we can. We need to develop inner stability while we can, because the outer stability will not be there to support us at the time of death. So the groundedness in our body is very helpful for us to develop stability, but of course when that is gone, then our mind will wander. It said our mind will wander aimlessly at the time of death. And what happens when the mind wanders, which we can also observe, the mind wanders, and when there's no stability, then there is more, then the kleshas arise. So it's like the growing ground for negative emotions. A lot of thoughts are the cause for a lot of negative emotions. And it means that this instability will grow at the time of death and after death. So we will be much easier, when the mind is unstable, it's much easier affected. by the kleshas, by the negative emotions. Yeah? So the importance, like many people say, how can we prepare? One of the most important aspects is to develop this inner stability through whatever methods you are familiar with. Because all of our meditation practice, they all aim to develop stability and mindfulness and awareness. And then we should think, when we think about death, we should recognize that it is natural. It is not something that we have to be so terribly surprised by when it happens to us. Which it seems that often, people are shocked. We live our life, in a way contrary to impermanence. So as Buddhists, if we really have taken to heart the truth of impermanence, which in itself, there's nothing Buddhist about it, because it's just observing reality. If we really have managed to take that to heart, we would not be so surprised or so shocked if we go to a doctor and we are told that we may only have a few months left to live, if we are fortunate enough to be in that situation. Because that's actually, according to Akong Rinpoche, that's a very fortunate position to be in, to be told that you have only a few months left. I was once in the office in Samiling when one girl came in and she told him that she had some kind of, I can't remember the name of the illness, but she had it was a degenerative illness that had no cure. And he said to her, she's very fortunate. Very fortunate. Because the point is that you have time, you have some time to prepare, get your luggage ready, get yourself ready. But of course we don't feel like that when it happens to us. We want more time. But of course many people die without any warning, just from one moment to another. So having some time to prepare is seen as a positive thing. So you could say that at the time of death there are some things, actually at the time of death there are some things that are really important. One thing is to have a good environment, and that's in terms of both for ourselves, to know how we can create a good environment for ourselves, and also if we are with loved ones who are dying, what can we do to give them a better environment? And that's something we are not always in control of. But we can still do our utmost to improve it, to have like a peaceful environment, to have an environment that is not, it doesn't increase your fear. So I think most people, they would prefer to die at home, not to die in a hospital where you are surrounded by machines and by tubes and by lots of hustle and bustle and other people dying and being sick around you. So if we can be in a peaceful environment and surroundings, then that would be the best. We have to make the most of the best of what we can, the best of the situation we are in. We have to try and make the most of it, make the best of it. Whatever that is, we don't know. And then we should try and be surrounded by stable individuals. It's important who we have around us, who looks after us, who cares for us. It shouldn't just be anybody. It should be people who have some familiarity with being around death and dying. People who are not afraid of death, people who are not uncomfortable around death and dying. And also people who are maybe like they know your needs, they know your wishes, they understand your own wishes. That is helpful. People who are not themselves very emotional and overcome by sadness and grief and sorrow. Because if you are, when you're dying, if you're surrounded by people who are really, really upset, that will make it harder for the person who's dying. say a mother who is there, or a father who is there, surrounded by the children, and the children are crying, and the children are so sad. This is probably the worst thing for the person who's leaving, or the other way around, like being surrounded by people who are grieving your own death. It makes it harder for you to let go. It makes you sad. It makes you suffer. So the people who are surrounding you should do their very best to let you go, in a good way, of course. We love you, but we'll be okay. We'll be okay. Not be super emotional and crying, and also not be super necessarily talkative, talking about all sorts of things because they're afraid of silence. Talking about, not meaningful things, just chattering, because they don't know what to do around a person who's dying. Sometimes you have that reaction. So to have people who are stable, who are kind, that is very helpful. Who are not afraid. They can, and also if they can guide you, if they are there to remind you, by guiding you, meaning that they can remind you of how to think. They don't necessarily have to be teachers, just a friend who can remind you to think of your teacher, think of the 3 jewels. Develop devotion, have compassion. Think of what develop appreciation, remind you of all the positive things you've done in your life. Like that, that's very helpful. So your environment, try to create a positive environment around the person who's dying to the best of your ability. So having the right environment also means one can set up a little shrine, have visual representations of things to inspire the person, play teachings, read passages of the teachings to the person. All of that really, the purpose of all of that is really to have the next thing, which is the right attitude. And the right attitude is really important, because it's said that whatever state of mind we're in, actually at the time of death, is very, very important. Our mind state is it's like the force that takes us forward at the time of death, and in a way sets the track and the intention for where we are going. So it's said that our mind state at the time of death is very powerful. If we die with an angry mind, for example, if we die with a resentful mind, if we die with a fearful mind, or if we die with a very confused mind, those things will take us forward. Maybe that depends on what has created that confusion, because of course we may not be conscious. But the point is that we try, if we can, to die with a positive state of mind. Develop appreciation, develop devotion, faith, gratitude, compassion. So think of all the positive things that have happened in your life and be grateful for it. Be grateful rather than wanting to hold on, but just like appreciation, gratitude. So it's very important that like oneself is one, if one can, and then those around one tries to encourage positive mind states to help that passage forward. In some of the texts about the death and dying, or the bardos, it says in the Buddhist text, it says that an ordinary practitioner dies without regret. Dies without regret, and a medium practitioner dies without regret and without fear. And a supreme practitioner dies without regret, without fear, but also dies joyfully. So it's sort of put into 3 categories like that. Dying without regret is already actually very, I would say it's not ordinary at all. If we can die without regret, that's very wonderful, even if we have some fear. Because what it means is that we have lived our life very, very well. We have lived our life according to ethics, according to what is right, what is wrong, trying to avoid harming others, trying to our very best to live according to the Dharma. Because that's the essence of the Dharma, to give up negative actions, to practice positive actions, to tame your mind. That's what it says in the Dhammapada. That is, in a nutshell, Buddhism. So if we have lived a good life trying our utmost, we haven't been perfect, but trying our utmost to be a good human being, going in the right direction, then maybe we don't have too many regrets. But we also, when we say regrets, it doesn't mean that we haven't, like the fact that we haven't done bad things in our life doesn't mean that we don't have regrets, because we may have regrets, for example, that we may have wasted a lot of time. We may have spent a lot of our time on just sort of like going in circles, running in circles, and not much came of it. So I think regret can come also in various forms. But yeah, we should try and live our lives so that we don't have regrets. And that means that we need to be clear about our priorities. What are my priorities in my life? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to achieve? What is my goal for this journey before I go on the next journey? If we have our priorities very clear, then we know where to put our energy. We know where to be diligent, where to put our efforts. But if we are not so sure about what are my priorities, then we're just like a leaf in the wind, get blown ahead, according to circumstances. We go here, we go there, we go here, we go there. And that is not necessarily bringing us much benefit or bringing anybody much benefit. But we should aim for this, to at least to die having no regret. Having no regrets. And so, of course, if we have regrets, we should do our best during our lifetime while we can, to make good whatever it is that has happened. We should try to make peace. We should try to apologize if we need to apologize. We should try to do our best to mend whatever situations are there. But we shouldn't get stuck on it. When it comes to the actual point of death, we should not get stuck on that part, because that's already too late, isn't it? We should move forward then, and and we should, in a positive way. So not letting ourselves get stuck on the memory of past things we have done. Instead, think of the future and move towards the future in a positive way by thinking about the good things you have done, the practice you have done, the retreats you have done, the teachings you have received, the blessings you have received, the people you have helped in your life, all of the various, good things that you really treasure in your life. So that way, look towards the future instead, and look in a positive way rather than just being stuck on something negative that you remember at that time. But while you can, say even while we know we are dying and we may be on the way out, but if at that time, if we can have a conversation with someone, when relationships over the years, they become like knotted and it's become a situation where you don't speak to each other anymore because you're both so angry at each other, you're both so upset and hurtful. At that time, it's very good to try and make up. Because when somebody is dying, what they say, one thing we can be sure about is that they really mean it. They're really, really honest. And it's really from the heart and very sincere. So it opens up a communication that we couldn't have during lifetime, but when it comes to the end, maybe that's why when we get older we become a little bit more soft and a little bit more forgiving. But we often have these difficulties with individuals. But so that situation of, making up is very powerful when somebody is dying, because of that honesty and sincerity. So that's as an ordinary practitioner, it says we might hopefully be able to die without regret. And if we can, that's very good. Because if we have lived our life without awareness or without mindfulness or without a sense of, what is right or wrong, without ethics, then it's most likely we will have many regrets. But then the second level, dying without fear, it's hard to know, isn't it? Will we have fear or not? If we have fear now, we are likely to have fear at that time. But I think it very much depends on the circumstances of our death as well. Because we don't know, will it be painful, will we be, whatever situation we will be in, physically, we really don't know. We know that we've had fear our whole life, and it says that only a Buddha is beyond fear. Only when we reach Buddhahood have we totally conquered all our fears. Have we reached that state of fearlessness. Some people say they are not afraid of fear, so they're not afraid of death. And at that time, we may not be afraid of death. But of course, we don't really know how we will react when the time comes. If we can be calm, if we can remind ourselves that fear is just our ego talking, it's our ego chattering away, and that fear has tortured us for our whole life, then maybe we can, if we can remind ourselves of the teachings, remind ourselves that ultimately there is no one there to die, ultimately there's no one there to be afraid. Who is this person who is saying, I am afraid? Who is this person who's saying, I am suffering? Who is this person who's saying, this is a very difficult situation? But I think to a big degree it depends on our training during our lifetime. So how much training we've had during our lifetime, I think it will depend on our level of fearlessness at the time of death. So the real message is actually that we need to train our mind now while we can. Because at that time, it's too late. So when we're comparing our dying process to a journey, to taking a journey, and we're saying, depending on, or saying that we need to make sure we bring the right luggage. That's also part of training. When we say we need to train our mind, that also means we need to train. The training is in how we apply ourselves during life. Training doesn't just mean when we sit on the meditation cushion. It means how we use our body, speech, and mind. Because the results of that is what we are bringing in our luggage. The effects of our actions, the effects of our speech, the effects of our way of thinking is, the luggage we bring with us. So we want that to be positive. We want it to be the right things. We want it to be positive qualities, not negative qualities, not negative consequences, not negative karma. And so all I mean to say is that the training is very important in all these areas during our life. How we spend our life, how we use our time, how we act, what are the consequences of our actions. So we're saying that there are three things that are important when the time comes to die, right? Right environment and right attitude. Then the third thing that I was going to mention is they're the things to do. So trying to have the right environment, trying to develop the right attitude, then there's the things we need to do in relation to death. But really they ought to be done before we come to that point of where we are on our deathbed. They're the things we need to do, like to put our house in order. And that's all very practical things. It means that, many people, they spend a lifetime accumulating material things. They spend a lifetime working so hard to accumulate a house and wealth and various things. Now what you really want to do is to get your house in order so that those things that you worked so hard to accumulate and to gain and to gather, they don't become a cause of suffering for others. Because that I have seen many, many times, is that if somebody somebody dies without having made very clear directions, given very clear instructions on, this is who has to have that, and this is who has to have that, and this of my children, this is what goes to my son, this is what goes to my daughter, this is what goes to my cousin, this is what goes to whoever we want it to go to. We need to make that very, very clear, because everybody in the family will have different ideas. We might think that everybody has understood our wishes, but it is very often a cause of family conflict. And I think that would be the last thing anyone would want if you have worked so hard your whole life to have comfort and to have a good, good life. Then you don't want that to become a problem or to cause problems for friends and family. So you can prevent that by, of course, like what we do in this day and age, we write a will that is with the lawyers and everything. And also in terms of your body, how you want your body to be treated after death. Now there is, in UK, and I think also here, we talked yesterday about in a death cafe, there is you have to opt out if you don't want your organs to be used for organ donation. So those kind of choices have to be made. Those kind of decisions have to be made. Do you want organ donation or not? It's not like that's your own decision completely. But in terms of conflict and confusion after your death, if those decisions are not clearly communicated, then it ends up becoming a problem for those who are left behind and maybe cause of suffering. So it's very important to consider what you want done with all those things like a body, wealth and body. So that's kind of a summary of the, like, one way of putting this Buddhist approach to death and dying, and through, contemplating impermanence, so we become very familiar with our own immortality, with our own mortality. Did I say our own immortality? I was just testing you. Become very familiar with the mortality of all things. How things are constantly changing. There's nothing we can regard as permanent. Things we don't use, we put them away in a cupboard. They sit there for 20 years and they have deteriorated. A nice cupboard or a nice plate, a nice cup, and it looks old. Nothing touched it for 20 years, but it's somehow the elements change and deteriorate our body. So we need to really try and familiarize and take to heart this impermanence and familiarize ourselves with the fact that we are going to die, and we should really treasure each day of our life as much as we can. We should be grateful for each day of our life. We should make the most of our life while we have it. So the study and familiarization of impermanence and death and dying is not a sad message. It is an encouraging and motivating message to make us live our life to the full. That should be the effect of it. That we really sort of wake up and say, oh yes, I'm alive and wonderful, but I know I don't have endless time, but I'm so fortunate now I'm alive. I think that's what Lama Yeshe said. Every morning he wakes up to say, I'm so fortunate I'm alive. Every day if we had that attitude, that would be wonderful. And that should be the result of it. And then we should think about this, in terms of this journey and how we can make that journey as positive as possible, how we can have our own right environment, how we can help others to have the right environment, how we can support others to have the right mindset, to ease their fear, their worries, their uncertainty, to ease their regrets, to develop more of a positive mindset, to make sure things are sorted practically. Then I think we're doing well if we can do that, and we can try and aim towards that. Like when you see somebody who has, I remember that in one of the retreats in Pure Lands there was Al. Do you remember Al, who was a gardener in Samyeling? He had cancer, and he actually came up to the men's retreat for the last few months of his life. He didn't stay in the men's retreat, but he stayed in the caretaker's house, and from the women's house we could see him. From time to time he would go out in the driveway and just go for a little walk in the driveway up at Pure Lands and go back inside. And his face was so radiant and so alive. He was somebody who was dying, but his face was so alive. Like he was taking in the sunset. He was feeling the wind on his face, like he was living his life for his moment to the full, because he knew he didn't have much time left. And actually we should be like that all the time. We should, if we were convinced of our own mortality, that's how we would be. But we aren't, truly. We do have some sort of false security, false sense of security, and then we get shocked when it happens. So we could leave it there, and if you have questions, we can spend the last time on questions.
You were talking about the six realms of samsara, but she was only aware of 4 realms. So could you please explain a little bit more about it?
So the 6 realms are, you can see them as like manifestations of the 6 negative emotions. Meaning that, so you have like the animal realm, hungry ghost realm, the hell realm, hungry ghost realm, animal realm, human realm, jealous God realm, and God realm. And they correspond to anger, the hell realm, anger, greed, ignorance, desire, jealousy, and pride. So that you could say that if, like the human realm is said to be the desire realm. So where we are constantly striving for more and better and faster and something different. We're never really content with what we have. That's the main drive in a human realm, in the same way the other emotions are manifest very strongly in the other realms. Yeah.
And to English. On one side, we say samsara is suffering, and on the other side, we say we should be grateful and so happy every day to live in. So it's kind of paradox, and how can we handle it?
So the idea is that we all want to be happy, right? We all want to be free from suffering, but that as long as we are under the misunderstanding, as long as we are under this strong belief of an I, then we are constantly experiencing disappointment and attachment and aversion. And gradually, by overcoming our negative emotions, by taming our mind, we are coming closer and closer and closer to freeing ourselves from that illusion of like grasping to a self. Grasping, ego clinging is the root of samsara, the root of suffering, the cause of suffering, ego clinging and ignorance. So ignorance means the not knowing who we are, not knowing the nature of reality. And with that ignorance and that ego clinging comes attachment and aversion, grasping, comes all the negative emotions. So you could say that all the positivity is like a gradual erosion of the negativity and then the holding on to a self by being positive, by developing loving kindness and compassion, and by thinking of others. Our self-importance is diminished. And gradually, we're moving in the right direction of freeing ourselves from ignorance through all these various means, through positive thinking, through taming the mind, through positive action. So within samsara, there is still positive and negative. Within samsara, there is the fact that positive actions creates happiness, negative actions create suffering, but it's still within the samsaric realm until we have exited that one exit that is there in the hospital of the six realms, samsara. Until we totally free ourselves, we are within the law of karma, where negative actions produce suffering. Happiness is caused by positive actions. So we need to increase the positive. And when you completely transcend it, then you also transcend karma.
He compares consciousness to sound. And he says that a good sound engineer, for instance, can propagate the sound, direct it, control it, whereas someone who can't, then the sound just disperses everywhere. And the sound also could it be a good metaphor or not? And also because sound has no substance, so it's a bit like the self. There's nothing there, and also all sounds finally are just one. There's no difference finally, and they also compared it to a electromagnetic. Comment est-ce qu'on appelle les rayonnements? Rays. And he was wondering whether this image could be useful and could be correct to understand mind and reality.
If it's useful for you, then it's fine. I think it's fine. Yeah.
And she would like to know what is the Buddhist view of suicide on the one hand, and on the, for instance, scientific efforts to prolong life indefinitely on the other one.
Mm-hmm. I think I can say that the Buddhist view of suicide is like it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. From any point of view, it's not a good thing. Suicide. Also, the whole idea of euthanasia is another thing, which of course is like, it's assisted suicide. One thing is suicide that you do by yourself, and then there's now this idea of legal suicide where you are assisted by someone else. From the Buddhist point of view, it's you're taking life. You're ending your own life, or you're ending someone's life, helping someone to end their life, which is a precious human life. Precious human life means that it has so much potential. And from the Buddhist point of view, death is not the end. Death is not seen as the end. So death is not seen as the end of suffering. In fact, it could be much worse after death. We don't know. Actually, that is the view. It could be much worse after death. So the idea that people take their lives to bring an end to their present suffering, it doesn't have any logic from the Buddhist point of view. So it's not encouraged, and also it is, from another point of view in Buddhism, it says somewhere that we have many like divine beings within our body, depending on how often we visualize ourselves, our own body, as a Buddha or as a deity. And that by taking our own life, we are also sort of cutting that short. So it's seen as something definitely not to do. The other point you mentioned was about what? Suicide and...
No, it was about the scientific efforts.
Oh, yeah. So these, that's a very personal choice of whether one wants to stay on a life support machine or not.
That's not what I
No?
want. It's really trying to extend human life in general that they could be deathless.
Oh. I never heard about that.
What's his name?
Eternal life?
Yes,
No.
kind of.
Who wants to prolong life by using
200 years.
By devices,
how is it called?
put different devices into the body.
Years.
Use the technology to put devices into the body to prolong the heart or the different functions of the body.
All right.
Transhumanism.
Right. Well, I mean, that sounds like a bit far-fetched, but But the point is, if we haven't tamed our mind, never mind how long our body stays here, we're not going to be happy and content. Even if we stay here 200 years and our mind is confused and all over the place, it's not going to do any good. But I don't think that's the majority. Who's next?
I have my own question, but I have another question following this one of suicide. I can totally understand what you said, your answer. But in my mind came that picture, that image of in the Vietnamese war long time ago. There were this monk.
Immolation, self-immolation, when they burn themselves, yeah.
It was very wild.
Also in Tibet. This also happened in Tibet, yeah.
So the monks, Tibetan monks
Would burn themselves as protest, yeah. This is not recommended. Even His Holiness Karmapa, he made an announcement when that started. That is quite a while, in the 60s, the 70s or something in Vietnam with Thich Nhat Hanh's group, and also in not so long ago, like 10 years ago or more, in Tibet, because the Tibetans were protesting so against the conditions there. His Holiness Karmapa made an announcement, and he said something like, "Well, the Tibetans, there are so few of them, and they're so very precious. They must not, they must not do that." It was his way of trying to stop it. It is very sad. It is not the way to go about it, to take your own precious life. Sometimes people do things out of desperation. Who's next?
One question.
Okay.
I'm going to forget it now. It was about not having fear for death. Some of us may not have fear about death. It means it's not a good thing not to have fear.
No, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing not to have fear. Yeah. And I think people who have strong faith have less fear. No, I think it's a very good thing. I think all I was saying was that we aren't in a situation of dying right now, so we don't know how we will feel actually at the time of our death, because we don't know what form it will take, and until we experience that, we don't know. But it's good if we don't have fear. It's good if we are familiar enough and have faith and strong faith, and it will help at the time of death. Yeah. And also I wanted to say, I've heard doctors who are familiar, who are around people who have died, they say that people who have strong faith, they tend to have a better day, more peaceful death. Do you have one last question? I think this lady had her hand up. She had her hand up before. So attachment to you, in your mind, is attachment and love the same thing?
I don't see very well the difference between both.
Yeah. So I suppose if we, certainly the idea is not that we stop loving others, but the idea is that we recognize that we are here together for a limited time. It's like shared time together. And if you live together with that acknowledgement, then the result would be that you really, really appreciate and care for each other and love each other, but when the time comes, it is not so painful to separate. So in a sense, that is that remembrance of impermanence, it eases the attachment. The attachment is a clinging aspect, but the love can still be there without the clinging. Yes, it's like the part of it, the part that wants something from it for myself. It's the attachment is the goodness that I get from the situation. That's what creates attachment. But you can still love the person.
Attachment is linked with ego.
Yeah.
And love is not.
So maybe I think to be realistic, love will have some degree of attachment to it, but we can lessen it, having less grasping, having less clinging, by recognizing that, our time is limited. Say you have a partner or your children or somebody you really care so much for, you wouldn't want to lose them, of course not. But you would really appreciate the time you have together very much. You would really want to show them how much you love them. You would really want to make it the best time, because you know it's limited. So it doesn't make your love less. In a way, it would, I think, would make it more. Because you would express it, because you know you only have limited time to express it. Yeah? Was that one question or two?
I had another one in comparison with the question about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
What is the real situation about abortion?
Abortion?
If a woman, for example, because some women make these child because they are not able to grow the child, or because they don't really want this child.
Yeah. Well, the view is that it's the woman's choice, for sure. It's the woman's own choice. I don't know if there, I don't know if there is a Buddhist view as such expressed, but I know that Akong Rinpoche, sometimes I know that he recommended, I know a few women he recommended, well, you could have the child and you could abort, you could have abortion. You could give it for abortion, because many women feel regretful if they have an abortion. Adoption. Did I say adoption? Did I say adoption? I meant adoption. That you could have the birth, but you could give the child for adoption. That is one option. If you are in two minds about, am I killing a child? Am I killing a child by having an abortion? Some women later feel like regret because they felt that they caused the death of a child. The freedom is the individual, of course. The same is this case of suicide, assisted suicide. Like wherever it's legal, it's the individual's choice. Yes. In Buddhism, most things are like that. It's your own choice, unless you have actually taken precepts. Like if you're a monastic or who's taken the vows, or if you're a layperson. As a layperson, you can also take vows and precepts. Unless you are sort of going against any precepts, then it's totally each individual's choice what you adopt and what you don't adopt. But you have to just know the consequences of your actions. You had one last question? Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so then there's just one question. You can only have one. No more, no two questions, only one.
Donc juste une dernière question. He works with accompanying dying people, and also in palliative care. And there's this question that's much talked about in the West about dying with dignity, which is associated to euthanasia. And very often he sees patients or doctors who accept it, and patients may die very peacefully because they are well with the idea that they will be euthanized. Makes them very peaceful. But as a Buddhist practitioner, and it also sees doctors who are doctors or nurses who are not comfortable with that. And he himself, as a Buddhist practitioner, doesn't know very well, but sometimes he feels uneasy as well. So if you have any advice or comment about it.
Well, I personally would feel very uneasy with it also, for the reasons that we just talked about previously, but also because I think if it becomes a very accepted thing, then there is a certain pressure on the people who are ill and old. No, I mean not pressure from externally, but pressure from internally. If that situation can arise, that if I am very ill, if I am I have an illness that will be progressively worse and worse and worse, and my family are being more and more burdened by me being ill, then I might feel that I don't want to give that burden to my family. That's what I mean. And that is where I feel there's also a danger in having the possibility of euthanasia, is that it becomes more and more accepted that we just have to sort of weed people out when they are not. Why were you shaking your head?
No, but what I was thinking is that if it comes from you, it can be compassionate for your family. If you know, for instance, that both can. But I think that legally it is sufficiently framed for external pressure not to.
But it's not external pressure; it's internal pressure by the person who is ill. That if I, for example, know that my family accepts euthanasia, my family feel it's okay to have euthanasia, but I don't feel it's okay, and I don't really want to go that path. But I am, through my own illness, I am being a burden to my family and my surroundings. I might put pressure on myself to go that path. To me, that is a difficulty as well. As well as the we discussed that already earlier. It was kind of covered in the earlier question about suicide, no? But I think there are too many questions around it and too many uncertainties around it, I find. But at the same time, I can understand why somebody, if they don't have the view, the Buddhist view that there is reincarnation and there's a continuation, if they think that this is the end of life, and if they are really suffering through illness, then, you can understand why they choose that path. If they really believe this is it, the end of my suffering, so why not? Why not jump over the cliff if that is the end of the suffering? But the Buddhist view is not that it's the end. But I'm not sure where your question came from. Was it because of the uncertainty of the doctors, or like how to deal with that? What was the exact question?
Mm-hmm. No, it was about a doctor, the team with which she's working, and the doctor accepted to practice in euthanasia on a patient that was requesting it, and it was very peaceful and appeasing for the patient himself. He felt relieved, but the doctor himself at the same time felt he had helped someone to find peace in death, but he himself had a hard time living to what he had done.
Yeah. So I think there are many questions around that whole issue of legal euthanasia, and for various reasons, it's a very complicated issue. We can see how it is a sort of maybe for some it is like a short-term solution almost for the situation of being very ill, but from the Buddhist view, it's not a long-term solution. And it creates conflicts if you are in that situation of having support to support someone to die, assisted suicide. But that is maybe a conflict that is sometimes part of being a doctor or a nurse or working in that profession. So you may not have a choice. I realize that the is done with compassion, but from the Buddhist view, it's still taking life anyway. But let's end it here. Shall we end it here? Nam de tam che se pa ne top ne nye pe da nam pam che ne je ga na je ba lab tuk pa ye se pe so le do wa dul wa sho shang jo sem jo rinpo je ma je pa nam je jo jik je pa nyam pa me pa dang gone gonto pel wa sho